Hey everybody, happy Monday, and I hope that you all had a great Mother's Day weekend. Today is the start of a brand new week, and who do we have on the front cover here? We have Nova, because his event is literally, and I mean literally, like around the corner, this coming week. And we need to start talking about it. At least here on the Boilon channel, we need to start talking about it, because I haven't really done that yet. And my apologies, I've been taking a little bit of a breather this past weekend. But we're getting back into Marvel Strike Force now, and we need to really just start talking about how you're going to be able to do the best you can on this Nova Scourge event. Now, we're going to be doing this in two parts. It's going to be a two-parter video. So today we're going to be talking about the best characters that you can bring in for this event. And then tomorrow we're going to be doing a breakdown of a tier list of the Scourges or packs. I still call them Scourges because really that's what it feels like at this point. So that's what I'm calling it for the moment. I'll probably be able to, ease into it later on. But nonetheless, we're going to talk about all the best ones and what you're going to want to look out for and avoid. We'll talk probably a little bit about the packs today, but a lot of it is going to be for that tier list that's going to be on the other for tomorrow. So if you're ready to go, everybody, let's boil this down. And to get a better understanding of what it is that we're going to need, this was the chart, that was on the blog, that ended up being on the blog post later on Friday night. I shared this on my Discord, so hopefully, some of you have had the chance to take a look at this. This is really important because it kind of outlines all of the characters that you're going to need from difficulty 5 and onwards, because and maybe even before 5 as well. If 5 is where a lot of the competition starts happening, but beforehand there's a little bit of restriction as well. For difficulty 1, there's pretty much no restriction across the board. Difficulty 2, there's a little bit, but not that much. You see City, Bio, Cosmic, Villain, and that repeats. On 3 actually. On 2 there's only like one section of that, and then on 4 you get Villain, and then the rest: City, Bio, Cosmic, Villain, and then that on repeat. It's difficulty 5 where that's the most important. So obviously we have those. The new restrictions are on 2, 6, and 10, and the main part of why this is so you are not able to loophole this event by not building the team. So in the past, when the specific Horseman teams were 5 and 10, you were in fact able to loophole this a little bit. If you're a veteran player, you could loophole this by doing like difficulty 7 or 8 and doing the first 4 nodes and not actually having to build the actual intended Scourge team on node 5, because that would give you more than 500k if you ratcheted up the Scourges and got the points. That would allow you to get over 500k and thus not actually needing to invest in these teams. Now you have to some degree here with Quicksilver, Masters of Evil, and X Factor, because it's on node 2. It's pretty much unavoidable unless you're just sticking to difficulty 4. And I'm not really sure how much points, because I'm not going to assume that the same amount of points are going to be equated to on this event and previous events, like in terms of how to get to the 500k and higher. Like I can't say how much points you're necessarily going to get out of difficulty 4 for this. So we should do this with difficulty 5+ in mind, and that's what we're here to talk about in today's video. So we have Quicksilver, Masters of Evil, and X Factor on 3 of the nodes. We have no restrictions on 1 of the nodes, and then 3 more sets of characters: City Hero on 3 and 7, Global Bio on 4 and 8, and then we have Cosmic on 5 and 9. Now, Cosmic is very broad. We're going to be going over those characters. There's a lot of very strong characters, and so I have this feeling that it's actually going to be a bit more challenging because of that. Now, you're probably going to have most of these characters at your disposal anyways, but just know that like when you start stacking on packs, for the additional points, that's probably going to get a lot harder, and we'll take a look at that as well. So let's get started. I guess we can start right off the bat with Quicksilver, Masters of Evil, and X Factor. So I have Masters of Evil built, and I have Quicksilver built. I have X Factor a little bit, but I honestly don't think I'm going to need to use them. So in the past, when it came to secondary teams, you really didn't need to do that. So when it was the Death Scourge for Archangel, it was Bionic Avengers and Wakandans. You actually didn't even need to use the Wakandans at all. You could just go through the whole thing with Bionic Avengers. And for every other event, you pretty much could. Now, if you're trying to be like, top 1,000, top 2,000, maybe you need everything, to stack on those packs and get through as much as you can. But for the most of us who are like reasonable people in the top 20%, you're not going to need both. Let me tell you that right now. So what I am thinking about, though, is maybe trying to weasel Quicksilver in here with my Masters of Evil, because I really don't like one of them. And who that is I'm not a big fan of Absorbing Man. I say that I need to get my Moonstone up a little bit higher. Actually, in fact, I didn't have her hearted, so I'm going to do that now to remind me to at least get her to level 85. And gear tier 16, but I really don't like Absorbing Man. I think at least at 4-4, he still feels really squishy, despite his 600k hit points, and I don't know, his kit feels a bit lackluster overall, and even when I'm using him in Cosmic Crucible, I feel like he's always the first one dead, and he doesn't really do much. Like, maybe if I'm lucky, I get like one skill off in Cosmic Crucible, and then nothing much else. The only reason why you'd probably want to run him is because, you know, he does give these bonuses to the team, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, resistance, which actually isn't all that much now that I think about it, which is another reason why I'd probably want to get rid of him for Quicksilver. But we're going to talk about this part right here, because there's a specific Scourge pact that actually is very important to this, and I don't remember which one. It's this one here. Power Cosmic. All Cosmic Crucible abilities are active during this run, which means that the Masters of Evil are going to get hypercharged in the same way that the minions did for the Death Scourge. So you won't have to worry about this. They're just going to blow everything out of the water. Now, the flip side to this is not only is it activating Cosmic Crucible abilities for everyone that you plan on using, we'll talk about that more on the next set of characters, but also the enemies. So I have this strange feeling that we're going to be going up against Tangled Webs as enemies. We might even see Masters of Evil as enemies, and that's going to be a double-edged sword. Nonetheless, though, it will help Masters of Evil, you know, if you're talking about, oh, they're not so great outside of Crucible. Well, now you get all the Crucible text. And that might make Absorbing Man a little bit better, but we'll see. We'll see how things go. I want to have Quicksilver built up, though, just in case I need to use them, and then I can put them in. I'm probably not going to do much more than this, because I only have him at 3 yellow, 3 red, 85 with my T4s in. That's what I got in with him right now. So let's talk about the second bit. That's going to be important, and that's City Heroes. City Heroes. Now, this one is interesting, because we have some City Heroes that are being released right now in the game, at least not free to play. Some of them might be free to play, some of them are not. Gwenpool is not. Gwenpool will not be available free to play before the end of the Nova event. Her free to play event is going to be a week after Nova's event starts, so you won't be available to get her free to play. Just make sure. I just want to make sure that we're clear about that one. Firestar, you probably will. You should be able to get her unlocked free to play. Because I think most of the, maybe I pulled 1 or 2 orbs, but I'm pretty sure that you should be able to get her before the end of the Nova event. So that's what I'm talking about. Tier 1 City Heroes. I don't know why I went like this. Tier 1 City Heroes are going to be the new warriors. So that's going to be Cloak, that's going to be Dagger, and that's going to be Firestar. Now, if you have Gwenpool, great, because you're going to be able to use that Cosmic Crucible text, and that's what makes this all that much more important. If you don't have Gwenpool, then obviously you're going to have to consider some other options here, and I kind of want to, these are what I'm going to call my tier 2 options, and that's what I want to talk about. Spider-Man 2099, because, and actually possibly Spider-Man Noir as well, if you have them built up pretty high, because there's this one up here, Masters of Spider-Verse. On spawn, oh wait, no, sorry, no, it is this one. On spawn global bio characters, Spider-Verse characters gain the Tangled Web trait. Depends on how many new warriors you're using, but you could be able to combine Spider-Man 2099 and his passive with Tangled Web that also allow these other things. He gains bonuses to them as well. He'll give them. So if you're using any Spider-Verse characters, it'll also make them Tangled Web, which means they'll get 20% drain, they'll get 50% focus, they'll get the resistance, and they'll get all this additional stuff from the Crucible bonuses, assuming you're running that for Masters of Evil. So Spider-Man 2099 is pretty good on his own, actually, because he does give a lot of negative stats effects, which I really like. You know, he applies that slow and defense down for 2 turns, and he's filling speed bar to Tangled Web. So if you use any additional Spider-Verse characters, they'll get that as well. And his special as well, which gives offense up for 2 turns to 2 random allies. So again, prioritizing Tangled Web, but if they happen to be Spider-Verse, then they'll do. And all this stuff that he gets in Crucible on crit by prolonging negative status effects by 1. So a lot of people, especially veterans, will have him up when they use them in the arena meta. Who you would pair with that, though, to trigger the Tangled Web? Personally, Ghost Spider, obviously. I don't know why I was up here. So I would do a Ghost Spider Spider-Man 2099 combo. I think that this could be really, really strong, because that she is by herself, standalone, very strong. If you're a player that had invested into the Web Warriors, if you had not, then you can skip this. Other options: Shang-Chi and Squirrel Girl, obviously, are what I would call top tier 2 options in this instance. So Firestar, Gwenpool if you have her, Dagger, Cloak, Ghost Spider, Spider-Man 2099, Shang-Chi, and Squirrel Girl. Outside of that, in my opinion, I don't think the rest of them are too much worth it. I don't have Spider-Man Noir that built up because he was a Mystic character, and I still don't really find a ton of value in him. So I think you can kind of like leave that away, unless, and I talked about this in my Discord, unless there happens to be a crap ton of Hydra or Swarm enemies. That's the only instance that you might want to pull in Spider-Man Noir for the City Hero section. But there is a decent amount of characters that you can pull in regardless, and I don't think that this will be super difficult. I think it'll be a little bit more reasonable compared to some of the other sections that have a crap ton of characters to choose from, namely the Cosmic section. So the next thing up is Global Bio, and this is very specific, actually, in fact, because we know once I start clicking on this, who it's going to call out for. Well, who do we have here at the top of my roster? We have Rebirth, and we have Gamma. Now, in this instance, we only have a 4-piece Gamma. We don't have She-Hulk because she's a City Hero, right? So I didn't even mention her because, honestly, you don't want to use She-Hulk standalone, just like she sucks in Dark Dimension standalone as well. But, you know, our options, interestingly, includes Moonstone. Now, if you happen to not need her as much, or if you are using her somewhere, if you're not using her anyways, you could use her here if you're using Quicksilver Inner Space, for example, because she'll have that, presumably, have that Cosmic Crucible stuff inside, which is really good. She doesn't apply stun to the primary target, reduce speed bar to, so she has some really good mechanics that doesn't rely on the rest of the Masters of Evil. She has a bunch of stuff here though, which does include more Masters of Evil, but nonetheless, you know, she does do quite a bit on her own as well. So she would make a very good 5th member with the rest of the Gamma team. Otherwise, you're stuck on Rebirth. So you have 2 teams here, and hopefully that's enough to get you through the 2 nodes, and that's going to be Rebirth, and that's going to be Gamma. You would probably have both, but I would, you know, so I'm not going to say who you should prioritize at this point because we don't know the enemies on the node. Nonetheless, though, these are really the only characters that you're going to be using for this. Moonstone, you don't necessarily have to. Now, who else could you use in that place? What I don't like is that US Agent really effing sucks outside of raids. And we don't get any bonuses where the Rebirth get their raid text. So US Agent is replaceable. Heck, you could probably put Moonstone in US Agent's place as well if you're not using Gamma. But the other options are not that great. There's also Titania, actually, in fact. So if you wanted to use Titania, you could, but I don't know who is necessarily better than the other standalone. I probably wouldn't break up too much of the above team to include both Titania and Moonstone, especially when you need them for their own section. So I'd be careful about that. And Zombie Man Iron Man is okay. He's not bad, but he's obviously not amazing without Hela. The rest of them are pretty crap. You can take a look at them here for yourself. And Yo-Yo is not good if you're thinking about that because many characters on the above team are protectors, including Captain America and the Hulk, which means that her passive will not trigger at all. So be mindful of that. But nonetheless, hopefully between these 2 teams that you are able to get things through. And finally, we need to talk about Cosmic because while this is very easy, I think that this is going to be a hard lane because you have so many strong characters. So right off the bat, you know, you have Eternals, Dormammu, Kang, you know, super strong characters. Who else is at the top of my list? You have Hela, you have Kestrel, you have Deathpool. You know, these are all characters that you're probably going to have a decent chunk into. You could do Guardians. You could do the full the full Infinity Watch, in fact, because they're all Cosmic, right? So that's one team that if you have as a veteran player, that you can kind of keep them aside maybe as a SAC team or whatever you need to do, but you can use them as a full 5-man entity because it's just Cosmic. So you could bring in all of the Infinity Watch team, and then you have leftovers still. You have Dormammu, you have the Eternals, you have Kang, and then Kestrel or Deathpool, probably Deathpool. But you could use Kestrel as well. You know, there's a lot of good options in here. So you should be able to build at least 2 teams, in my opinion, to do this. And I think for pretty much all of these nodes, hopefully that you have at least 2 teams worth of characters. Like I said, you had Gamma and Rebirth. You have the 10 plus characters in the Cosmic that I'm sure that you can come up with. Realistically, you could also use Hero as Guardians, but that's not a recommendation for me. And then for the City Heroes, it's a little bit stricter, but I think that there is still some pretty good characters in there because of the packs. So I don't think this is going to be too bad overall. And also, I forgot to mention that the first one is no restrictions. So you can use basically anyone else that's not part of any of this, which would include... Global villains. A lot of villains would be in here, so maybe global villains, city villains, anything like that. Probably villain characters, mutant characters, unlimited X-Men, for example. And that's going to be an interesting one. And we'll talk about that when we do a tier list, because if you remember from the Power Cosmic, all cosmic Crucible abilities are active during this run. So that would make Unlimited X-Men in Node 1 very, very powerful. Depends on what kind of enemies you're going up against, but that's something that I could see using. You could use Wakandans. You know, there's all sorts of other characters that don't fit in these other nodes that you could just throw at this node until it goes down, basically. I don't think that part's going to be that difficult. And so I think overall that this isn't going to be that challenging. I think that it's going to depend on the packs. We're going to talk about that in tomorrow's video in more detail. And what I think that what's most striking, obviously, is that they have the restriction here of the specific characters in the teams here on Node 2. So you can't really loophole and bypass leveling them, because you're going to need to do it unless you're just sticking with difficulty 4 or below. So that's going to be the end of this video for Monday, everyone. And keep an eye out for the tier list of the packs or scourges or whatever you want to call them for Tuesday's video. So that's the end of here. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.